Okay, so it's Mike's from LiveMyAssOff.com, and we're heading back down. We were up here watching sunset, of course, and Benji's like, "Hey, you want to watch sunset?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." And then Gracie asked me, she goes, "Well, you want to go now?" I said, "Well, yeah, I guess that's fine." He goes, "Yeah, well, if we don't go now, it gets really dark." I'm like, "Oh, right, of course, that makes sense." And we only have these little flashlights, of course, on our phones, the little thing, so that's not going to work. So yeah, so we're heading back, and the cool part is actually along the way, he says he's going to show us some, there's been a family of turtles that apparently have laid eggs. So we're going to check that out as we make our way down the mountain. And I'll tell you, it was certainly a long walk up to the top. But it was one of those deals where, of course, it was worth it. And the other nice thing actually about the weather right now is that it's, obviously you're walking up this thing, you're sweating like crazy, right? But by the time you get to the top, there's a little breeze and there is some shade. And so the nice thing about that is that you get a little breeze, you get a little bit of shade, combine that with your sweat, and you actually cool off. Nature's air conditioner, ladies and gentlemen, the swamp cooler. I'm basically a walking swamp cooler. So we walked through here, and not a ton of nature in the sense that there's not, animals and that sort of thing. Now, to be fair, it's daytime and it's hot, so I'm sure there's nocturnal animals. But interestingly enough, the only nocturnal animal, 100% nocturnal, a bat, is what we saw walking up here, and so that was kind of interesting. I'll tell you, the good news is that I knew from going to the underground river with Gracie, where there are bats, that she wasn't bothered by bats. So that was helpful. Because, it's no fun to be in the middle of the woods and see an animal that you'd rather not and be uncomfortable, and that doesn't really add to a nice vacation, right? So it's good, and that's actually where he was hanging out. And so the cute part about the guy, I don't know if you caught it from the video that I did of the underground river, but the tour guide, as he was paddling us through, he would talk about the area where all the bats would hang out and defecate. And he goes, "Yeah, we call that the bathroom." I'm like, ha ha ha, cute. A lot of cool exploring actually on this trip. And again, I know that if you're watching this, I'm honored, but also I know if you're watching this, then we are no longer here. Even on the top of the mountain, I was only getting like 2 bars, 3 bars, which makes sense. I mean, if you're a cellular provider, you're not throwing antennas to basically, oh yeah, let's make sure we hit the peak of that mountain. No, you're making sure you hit the ground within a small area, i.e. a cell. So, and then of course there was part of me that, wanted to make a phone call to my parents and say, "Hey, how's it going? Guess where I'm calling you from?" But knowing that it was about 4:30, 4:45 when we got up there, meaning it would be 4:30, 4:45 a.m. in Boston, in Massachusetts. And the 3 bars kind of told me, you know what, there's a real good chance my phone's going to drop out. So, as you might guess, calling my parents at 4:30 in the morning might concern them if all of a sudden I'm like, "Hello, hello, hello, can you hear me?" And then the phone cuts out. That wouldn't make them feel too reassured. Why did Michael call us so early in the morning? Hopefully everything's okay. What's wrong? It's just, you don't want to unnecessarily concern your parents, right? So, I'll tell you though, when we get back to the house, I am really looking forward to some really cold water. I think I'm out of Coke Zeros, which are incredibly refreshing for me. I think I mentioned before that for whatever reason, Coke Zero is a lot more popular than Diet Coke, which of course they call Coke Light in the whole rest of the world. But those are pretty good. And the ice that we've had, actually the cool thing is we bought this styrofoam ice chest. It's probably at least 1 inch thick, so it's got really great insulation properties. And so it's had the ability to keep our ice pretty cold, which is cool. Ice, if you don't know, that we buy here, again talking a little bit of a contrast, not necessarily culturally, but more habitually. the ice you buy here is not in these 1 pound or 1 kilo bags even of chopped up ice. Basically what they do is they take, about foot long little cylindrical plastic bags, and they fill them with water, and they tie the top, and then they throw it in a freezer. And so basically you buy these ice cylinders, and I believe each one was like 7 pesos. So what's that? That is about 15 cents. So that was pretty good, and we got, I think, what, 10 of them? 12 of them, something like that? Yeah, 12 of them. I paid 86 pesos. Filled up the cooler, and the only reason we bought that many is because that's how many he had. And he's like, well, how many do you want? I'm like, well, how many you got? And he's like, oh, I've got a lot of them. I'm like, let's get them all. What's the downside to having extra ice, right? So, the neat thing, so Benji tomorrow is going to go over to another island. He's got a little boat that I'll show you as we get down here. He's going over there to take care of some errands, and he's also going to get us a gigantic lapu-lapu fish, which will basically be 2 kilos, and he's paying 300 per kilo. And I said, okay, well, while you're over there, I said, why don't you just get me some ice, get me some, Coke Zero, that sort of thing. And what I believe was the translation through he and Gracie was that, well, if he does that, then they will realize that he is buying this fish for tourists, and therefore the price of that fish will go up significantly, because, I guess, Filipinos aren't going to drink Coke Zero. I don't know, maybe. Maybe not. Don't know. So anyway, but ice will be good. And as long as I have ice and I have water and I have rice and I have fish, I'm a happy guy. I also think I have a chocolate bar, so those are good. That's refreshing. I think I have some cookies too, so that'll be good. So we've made it back down the steps, and so now we're here into the pathway, which even now, the sun obviously is behind all the trees, and so it's not really, it's not very dark. But I would bet in about an hour, looking back, I'll be like, I'm kind of glad we walked down. What's interesting is there's no cobwebs as I walk through here. Now again, these guys walk through this occasionally, but it's nice. I haven't had any, really spiders. There's not a whole lot of weird vegetation. But I got to tell you, this is the most spectacular mango tree I've ever seen in my life. I had no idea they got this big. Now the downside to basically it being 2 years of lack of rain is there's no fruit on these silly mango trees. And it's also kind of cool walking through here because you get to see as far as they've come with the construction. So they've got buildings that are about 85% complete where the workers would live. Whereas right now, they're simply living in the kitchen, which makes sense because then that way they can cook and go to sleep. This is one of the water towers. There's a much larger one. He said it's about 5 times this size, and it's actually on top of another mountain, another peak, which allows for us to have incredibly epic water pressure actually in the big house without relying on a pump. So, thank you, gravity. And then these guys, they put electricity on the way out here, so that way they have lighting. So they can, the pump goes and the lights are on, and they have the water basically being shipped from spot to spot with these big black plastic pipes. Now the interesting thing about that is I remember when we were in Boracay and we were driving back from Puka Beach, and you look on the side of the road and you see this one big pipe of about 1 inch, 2 inch for water, and then all these little sort of tributary meters, and each of those would be going to a shack, basically a house, and that would be that person's water supply. And the whole house would be basically a pipe that big through plastic. So anyway, these are what will be the workers' quarters when they finish it. Nice roof on there, by the way. Benji also said what he's going to be doing is he's actually going to be clearing this area right here and putting the power room there, basically, simply because you know, any large generator, and this one is, I believe it's 55 kilowatts or 50 kVA. It's makes more noise than the people that stay in the big house would like. I get it, especially because, of course, for the most part, you're using it at night. And so that power thing over there is going to go deep in the woods there and make it quieter for everybody. So we've made it out of the woods. We've made it down from sunset. So from around sunset in the evening, from Cagdanao Island, just off Palawan in the Philippines, it's Mike's from LiveMyAssOff.com saying, I hope you're living the dream. So if you're not living the dream, you're doing it wrong. Ciao.